Hi everybody, Ryan here again with Berserk Custom Paint, and I'm back again with another advice video for you guys. Since my first advice video, I've had a lot of questions, and since the other videos, I've had a lot of different questions on a lot of different topics, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to cover as many as I can in this video right here. So it's gonna be a good one. So stay tuned. First thing I'm gonna do is I found some questions on my page, and I went ahead and printed them out, so I'm going to read them to you. This one's from Chunk UI 999. Says, "Hi, I've just come across your videos. I think they're awesome. I've been spraying cars for 15 years and only ever had a mess about with airbrushes. Looking for a half-decent setup. What would you recommend in the way of airbrushes? What should I use?" Well, of course, in my last video, I guess he says he wants to use Devil Biss or Dagger. I guess in my last video, I said what I like to use, which is my Eclipse airbrush. If you're just starting out, play with the brushes that you want. I mean, this guy says he wants to use the Devil Biss and the Dagger. There's a lot of people that use those brushes. I'm not one of them. I can only tell you what I use. Once again, just like I mentioned before. I will say this though, I was in the hobby shop the other day and I noticed that Iwata actually has a brand new product, it was only like, I think it was something like 80 bucks or even less, maybe more like 60 bucks. But it looked like it was pretty close to the Eclipse that I used, but it was a cheaper product. Now I did have a friend in California who used the same airbrush. He went and bought it when he heard about it. He sent me a bunch of emails saying how he loved it, and he even said it shot smaller than his Micron. I find that hard to believe, but it's something to try out. So yeah, there's an Iwata brush out. I got mine at Hobby Lobby, or my friend got his at Hobby Lobby, and that's where I saw this one. So I would go ahead and try that one out. I haven't given it a go yet, but that's good advice for you. Second question is, "Hey, what up? I've seen all your videos. They're super cool and so helpful. I want to ask you a question. I've been doing some paint jobs for some of my friends, but I don't know how to charge for them. How can I charge for airbrushing? Thank you. It'll help me a lot." Another huge question, man. It depends on how much time you've put into your paintings, and also has a lot to do with your skill level and your reputation. If your skill level is low, then you don't want to charge a lot of people. You don't want to charge too much for your airbrushing if you haven't had a chance to build your name and your experience. I've been building my name for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. My dad built his name before I did. He's been doing it for close to 20 years. Like I said, I grew up in the business, so I pretty much jumped right into the deep end of the pool when I started doing this. So, and at the same time, I don't really charge that much. I just try to figure how many hours I'm putting into it, how much materials is going to go into that, and just make sure I pay myself accordingly. I mean, there's not really a really simple answer for that. It's whatever your skill level is. "Hi Ryan, may I ask, would you recommend doing art class before starting airbrush, and which one would you recommend?" I actually did take several art classes, not particularly airbrush classes. I did take one airbrush class, but most of my knowledge actually comes from years and years of drawing and painting and figuring things out on my own. Like I did tattoos for a long time. I did animation for a long time. I went to college for that. I did several different types of classes. I did private art lessons when I was a kid. All those things apply when you get into airbrush later. So, do I recommend classes? Yeah. Every class you can possibly take, every video you can possibly watch, every book you can possibly read. Do I recommend any one? I don't know. Life drawing was one of my favorites. That's the one where you see in TV where they draw the nudes. I love that class because it gives you a really good understanding for the human anatomy and proportions, because there's a lot of guys that don't really understand that very well. Then they go into doing portraits and whatnot, and they really get them out of whack because they didn't have a proper understanding for those kinds of things. So that kind of a class is really good. Basic drawing classes are really good. Airbrush classes, the Airbrush Getaways in Vegas, those are amazing. So that's some good classes for you. "Hi Ryan, may I ask, would you recommend doing an art class before?" Oh, that was that one. "Thanks for the tips. Looking to get into airbrushing, spray gun painting. Therefore, my question is about the compressor. What kind of compressor do I get?" bigger the better. If you're going to be doing like custom paint, like what I do, the big industrial compressors, the bigger the tank, the more pressure you can hold, or the more gallons you can hold, the longer it'll hold pressure, so you can spray for long periods of time, and it won't lose its pressure. I think I have mine set at somewhere around 100 pounds of pressure, and that runs most of my power tools and everything just fine. And I actually, when I'm running my airbrush out of my big, large compressor, I will regulate my airbrush locally, meaning I got my small airbrush hose that runs down into a regulator that I carry around with me in my toolbox. That takes it from the air compressor hose that runs, my DA and all my sanders and different things like that. It takes it from the big air compressor to this small regulator, which is attached to my small airbrush hose, which is sitting right next to me, so I can turn it and I airbrush like that. So I'm not carrying around or dragging around an air compressor with me everywhere I go. I just carry around that little regulator, and I plug that into whatever compressor is available if I go to somebody else's shop or something. But there's also CO2 tanks, like when I go do shows and events and different things like that, and I don't want a lot of noise, I don't have to worry about plugging into any electricity. They don't get a CO2 tank, and I'll fill that with the pressure, and that CO2 will usually last me a whole season on one tank. And that's, I'm not sure the exact gallons of my tank, but I mean, it's pretty good. I don't know about the size of a scuba tank, but yeah, that'll last me all season on just the CO2. So that's another thing about that. Thanks for the tips. Looking to get into airbrushing and spray gun. Got one. What's the best transfer paper to use? I just started airbrush. I use Surround Wax free paper, like I said, but there's still a shine coming from up under the paint. If you're using the Surround paper, also there's the graphite paper. Graphite paper is just like putting pencil lead down on there. And you're getting a problem with maybe it's lifting off the tape, or maybe it is showing through your paint. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put like a light coat of whatever that base coat is and cover it up. So let's say it was, let's say it's a white base. I used a graphite transfer, and so now I got a graphite color, which is a gray transfer that's down. It's really harsh, and I don't like how harsh it is, so I want to cover it up so I have a lighter transfer that's not going to show through my final painting, especially with, say, like a black and gray on white base. I'll just take the white, thin it down a little bit, or maybe put it in some Intercoat Clear, which I actually have right here. This is the Wicked transparent base, which just puts a cover over everything and seals it in, and it's not going to come through later, and it just locks it all in, and also takes away from the harshness of the contrast. Anyway, that's all with the questions and answers for right now. I'll move on to some other things. Like I said, it's going to be a really long video. I hope you guys like it. I've been talking to CreateX quite a bit about these videos that I'm making and asking them for their help and for me to inform you guys. So they've sent me out some products. They've been educating me to better educate you. And here's some of my favorite things that I've found that CreateX is doing. This is really good for you water-based guys, because I know a lot of you guys can't get to my urethanes that I've been teaching you about in the past. And so these products are really going to kick butt for you guys. This right here is the Restore. This is probably the coolest product that CreateX has shown me. It's an auto air product. CreateX makes auto air and Wicked. This is a soak. If you guys have been soaking, especially urethane guys, if you've been soaking your airbrush in lacquer thinner to clean it, then you're destroying it, because that lacquer thinner will get into it'll get into all the soft areas like the O-rings and things like that, the bushings that are inside there that are not made of metal, they're made of some sort of plastic or rubber. Your lacquer thinner will soften those and get them out of shape, and it'll ruin your airbrush. You have to replace all those parts. So don't ever soak your airbrush in lacquer thinner. Lacquer thinner is just good to use as a rinse if you're doing urethanes, not for water. Don't use lacquer thinner at all if you're doing water. But if you want to bring your airbrush back to clean again, this Auto Restore product is awesome. I'm going to show you a little later in the video. If you want to skip ahead to see that, just go ahead and skip ahead, and I'll show you later in the video how to use this. Another great product that CreateX has right here is this Wicked transparent base, which is the 0200. This is a really good product. If you notice how transparent I use, and you're trying to copy my style, and you probably, especially if you're a water-based person, you're probably having a hard time mimicking what I'm doing, because when I use my urethanes, I can thin it and I can stretch my color out a lot further than I can with a lot of my water-based paints. So one thing I'll do, and I'll do this even with my urethanes or with my water-based, I will use a transparent base to suspend that color. Transparent base just gives it back its thickness, it gives it back its body, because if you were to say just put straight reducer into your pigment, it'll eventually break that pigment completely apart and you're just spraying water out of your airbrush. But if you use a transparent base, like this Wicked transparent base, it gives it back the body that it needs, it gives it something to bind to, and you can work a lot more transparent, and that's a really good product for you. So that's what I do. That's something to look into. Even if you never even use it, I would suggest buying a bottle of this just to play with it and see how it works for you. It's good to even use this as like a intercoat base. So if you do a painting and you want to leave it alone for a while, but you want to be able to come back to it, and you don't want to get too damaged, this is good for something that you can spray over your painting and you've protected everything, like pushing the save button on your computer. That's what this is. And then this is the Wicked Reducer. Another really great product. Like I said, it's a really good video, so I really hope you guys are still watching and not bored yet. Steve Driscoll, he's one of the guys that I took a class with when I went to the Vegas, the Airbrush Getaway in Vegas. He came up with his own line of flesh tone paints. There are a lot of questions about flesh tones. I mix all my own because I have a pretty good understanding for color theory. Now, I do highly suggest, when you're asking about classes earlier, color theory. That's a really important class. I can't even begin to get into it right now for you guys on YouTube. Maybe I'll do something a little bit later. But Steve Driscoll has come up with his color method of making flesh tones. Just with these colors in this packet, this is called the Wicked Steve Driscoll Skin Tone Kit. Just with these colors alone, you can pretty much make any skin tone you ever need to make. Any race, any color, whatever. It actually still comes, and I'm about to open it for you guys right here with this. This poster is a step-by-step how Steve Driscoll does it. And if you don't know anything about Steve Driscoll, go to coastairbrush.com or Coast Airbrush TV. He actually has a video that he walks you through step by step this method on coasttv.com or coastairbrush.tv.com. But yeah, this is amazing, something to have. It comes with the packet, so you can hang on your wall. Never forget the method. This is a method that Steve has really done well with over the years. So that's another great product for you guys to look out for. Last thing from CreateX that I'm going to show you guys is when I ordered my colors, and CreateX will give this to anybody, so if you need to call them or whatever to get a hold of it, I guess it says it's a $30 value on the back, but I'm pretty sure if you order their products it comes with it, if I'm not mistaken. It says, I don't ever teach cheap tricks in my video, if you've noticed. I don't ever teach you the easy things, the stencily things that a lot of other guys teach you. The reason I don't teach them in my videos, there's plenty of other guys teaching that stuff that I can focus on something different. But if you want to learn that kind of stuff, if you want to learn how to do those custom effects that are a little simpler to do for the person maybe that needs a little bit of quickness, something that's easy. There's like 40 top tricks, pros. This is a great little CD, DVD thing to watch. It's got so many tricks in there. Looks like, just like on the cover, it shows how to do an American flag, how to do flames, how to do a cheetah print, how to do wood grain. Great product from CreateX. Alright, now the auto restore. I'm going to show you guys how to clean your airbrush the way that I do it. First thing, I'm going to take it apart. I'm just throwing my pieces in here. This is a plastic container, safe to use with my restorer. I'm going to use it as a soak. What this restorer is going to do is in about an hour to 2 hours, it's going to release all that paint that's been built up through my airbrush that I've been using all this time. That when you do a rinse, it doesn't get to that paint. It's going to release all of that. So I'm going to toss this airbrush. I'm going to take it apart. And here in about an hour or so, I'm going to show you the video in real time. I'm not going to put my needle in there, but here in about an hour, I'm going to show you all the particles and how this auto restore will soften up all that paint inside the airbrush, and it'll just move it to the surface, and it'll be floating on top. It's probably one of the most amazing things I've ever seen when I use this product for the first time. So I'll see you guys in about an hour. Okay, it's been about an hour now, and my airbrush has been sitting in the soak. There's a lot of little paint pigments floating around. I left my cap kind of dirty so you can see what happens when it breaks it down. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you up to it. There it is. See, I put a little pigment on the cap so you can see how it breaks it apart. There's all my airbrush. Now you can even give it a little, break it up, and I'm going to go ahead and put this back together, and you can see how to clean your airbrush. Okay, got another one of these plastic liners here. I'm going to fill this with water. Got some purified water right here. Now if you have like a Brita filter, or you just think that your water's clean enough, you can use that too, instead of just using like out of a bottle, purified water. So you don't want to leave the auto restore product on your airbrush, because I read that it doesn't mesh well with the water-based paints. So we're going to go ahead and, after we clean each part, we're going to rinse it in the water. So take a Q-tip here, get a little bit of the product on there, get all that pigment off. Now if you feel like there's some paint that's too small for your Q-tip to reach, you can go to like a Walgreens or a store like that, and they have what's called a what do they call it? Interdental swab. It looks like a little toothpick with some fuzziness on the tip of it. That'll be able to get into the crevices, the real hard to reach areas for you. But I'm not going to do it here, but like I said, that is an option for you. It looks like a little Q-tip. If the Q-tip isn't small enough, you can also take an old needle, sand the tip of that needle with a piece of sandpaper, make it real rough, and then you can actually take your needle, old needle that you don't need anymore. Like I said, you'll sand the tip of it, and then you'll take and you'll twist it at the tip of a Q-tip. It'll take those little fibers and it'll wrap it around there and just make a smaller Q-tip, and you can use that to get into even smaller areas if you need to. So I think that's pretty good. Clean in the back here where the trigger goes. Alright, now give it a good stir, get it good and rinsed off. We'll lay out a towel. Make sure with all these pieces, I've lost pieces so many times for not doing this in a flat surface somewhere. If the pieces fall, they don't go very far. So many times I've dropped my pieces of my airbrush and they just go off to another side of the shop, and I never find them again. So flat area, got it wet, or got a thing on there so it doesn't get wet. Good rinse. There we go. Lay it out. Okay, so I've got it all rinsed off and laid out here, and I'm going to go ahead and put it together for you. Here's the hardest part, and forgive my shaky hands, I know they're real shaky. You want to put the trigger down. The trigger has a little beveled thing at the bottom here. That's for when you pull it back when it hits the bar. So you want to make that facing towards the back of the brush. The beveled area facing towards the back. So I'm going to slide the trigger down in that hole there. It's kind of tricky. There we go. It's down in the hole. That's when you got a dual action airbrush, that's the single action. That hole, it pushes the pin down, which releases the air, which lets the air run through the brush. Now, I put this piece. This piece is what pins the trigger forward so you can get your second action, dual action airbrush. Here's the spring. Spring pushes against the trigger. Here's I guess a plunger piece that pushes against that string or that spring. Tighten that up, and now my trigger has the first action, which is down, second action, which is back. Trigger, back. Back releases the airflow. The further back you pull it, the more paint it lets go through the airbrush. So, there we go. Now we can put this piece on. Now, this piece here, this is a fluid nozzle tip. It doesn't screw on or anything, it just sets on there if you're using an Iwata Eclipse. So I'll hold it upside down like this, and then I'll take the cap that holds that in place, and I'll put it down on top of it this way. My needle I did not soak, so I'm going to put some of the solution on it. Wipe it off, clean the needle by hand instead of letting it soak. Needle's tricky, so I always hold my airbrush this way, and I run my needle back just like when I got this from when I used to do tattoos. That's how I load my tattoo needle. That way you don't want to burr your needle as it goes into the airbrush. So you just slide it in gently. Make sure it goes through the trigger because it's the needle that holds the trigger in place. And then you just boom, and you place it towards the front. You don't push it through. You don't muscle it at all. You just let it lay towards the front because it's easy to flour out the tip of that thing. So boom, that's in place. This is the set screw. I guess they have a name for it. Acorn screw or something like that. So boom, that's what holds the needle and bites the needle down, so now the needle is in place. Now that's a fully functional airbrush at this point. So now this is the guard. This keeps you from bumping the back of the needle. I've had this guard off before and been painting and then dropped the airbrush and pushed the needle through the front and floured it out and broke it. So this guard helps protect from that. So that's locked in place. This is the adjustment. If you haven't yet gotten real used to your needle control, trigger control, this will help it so you don't pull your trigger back too far. So you just tighten that in place like it is now, and boom, I can't even pull my trigger back at all. But I can loosen it, loosen the adjustment, and now I only have limited range. Tighten it back up, less range. Loosen it all the way. I usually run mine with it loosened all the way all the time. I only use this if I absolutely need it. But boom, there's my airbrush, fully functional, cap is clean. Put the cap on. Clean airbrush, just like a brand new airbrush. So there you have it. Pretty jam-packed video for you guys. I know I talked really fast in it, but I had to try to cram as much information as I could. This is YouTube, it's not a full DVD. But if you guys need any really good resources, Coast Airbrush TV is a really great one. You could contact CreateX. They're really good. One last treat for you guys. Last thing I'm going to share with you. I get a lot of questions about canvas. What canvas do I like? I use a lot of metal canvas. But my favorite thing for my water-based paints that's not like a metal canvas is this pre-gessoed clayboard that I've found at Hobby Lobby, which looks exactly like this. This is a painting I did for a friend's band called Taddy Porter. And this is I guess the board's made out of clay, it's probably what they call a clay board. And they've pre-gessoed it, it's pre-ready to go. All you gotta do is buy it, take it out of the package, and start painting on it. And it's brilliant. It's got a real smooth surface, so it takes the airbrush really well. So for you guys that want to do some art about this size, then this is a really good thing for you, clay board. So, alright, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them if I can. If I don't answer them right away, I apologize. I'll try to fit them in a future video. So, thanks for watching.